Today's episode is really going to be focusing on the cloud, the trends we're seeing, why cloud, and really help you get a good understanding of what goes into a system behind the scenes. And for today's guest, we have something a little bit different. We've actually got Patrick Higgins coming from the cloud. Pat?
Hello, everyone. Patrick Higgins from the cloud team here at DataBank. This is a group that focuses on the cloud experience for our customers, whether it be hosting in our cloud, taking advantage of cloud services. If you have questions about the cloud, if you're cloud curious, the team is here to help.
And I'm Kendra Deutsch with the professional services delivery team. I'm here to talk about the cloud with Pat and what we've been working on together.
Well, now it's time for the episode's beer tasting. Pat, since you couldn't be here today, I've got Kendra as your proxy to sample a beer with me. Today we're going to be trying out Ben Paddle out of Duluth, Minnesota's Cosmic Disco Hazy Dittler, so another double IPA. I figured since we're talking about the cloud, I'll get as close to it as I can here. So
You can thank me later, Pat.
Thank you now. Save me a hangover.
All right. So Kendra, each week we do a rating, and on that rating it's a 1 to 5. So what we'll do is we'll both take try to sample the beer, and we'll give the crew a rating.
It's not bad. Not a huge fan of IPAs, but I could probably drink half of one.
I think most people are going to realize there's a lot of IPAs being sampled here. It's weird who had a little bit of say in what we were going to be trying. What would you give her on a 1 to 5, Kendra?
Maybe a 4. 4 out of 5.
You give it a pretty good rating. I like it. It's a very strong beer. Tastes pretty good. It's florally. I'd probably give it about a 3.5 rating. So between Kendra's 4, my 3.5, we'll give it a 3.75 on Tech on Tap's beer rating of the day. Pat, getting into today's topic about the cloud, I really want to ask a few questions. Why are we talking about cloud today anyway? What's changed? What's different? Cloud's not new. From the cloud perspective and the technical team, why are we here talking?
Sure. So you're right. First and foremost, cloud has been out for a while. The advantages of it, some of it was sales speak in the beginning of it'll solve all your problems. It'll Julienne fries. It'll drive you home if you had too much. Not all that has panned out, but a lot of it has. Things like supply chain issues, dependability of hardware, availability globally for access to data. That stuff is actually there. What we see a lot of in the marketplace today is a large number of customers that haven't adopted it yet and realize that they are due or overdue to adopt it. Customers that have issues like system outages because of an AC unit failing in their server and taking out their servers. Issues such as only having one single node of their production system and their backup strategy is hard drive sitting on a shelf. Where in the cloud, there's a lot of advantages that, frankly, they've been there for a while, but they continue to get better for having redundant systems that are quick to stand up, that have predictive pricing. They don't have those upfront huge purchase prices. They just have a rolling service fee associated with. You don't have to worry about supply chain issues of you had a blade server die and your hardware vendor can't get you a new one for 2 months, 3 months. A lot of those problems are solved with the cloud, but there's also a lot of new things that are continuing to go on with the cloud that I think we're going to talk about more as we go through these questions.
Pat, we've worked together for quite a few years already, and before we had you on the cloud team, you were working with the data migration team. Can you talk maybe a little bit about, just look over the last couple of years, the trends we've seen from system migrations, hardware, cloud. Just talk a little bit about what we've seen.
Sure. And look, some of these problems are everyday problems for people in the IT space. It's not unheard of for one department to have their business solution application. HR has ADP. Sales teams might have Salesforce. A services group might have OpenAir. You go into a hospital, the same thing can happen. You go into manufacturing, the same thing can happen, government, et cetera. Everyone winds up with their own repositories. I think anyone that's ever worked with SharePoint has seen this. You have 1,000 SharePoint pages and it's hard to find what you're looking for. And on the IT side of the house, they're looking at, well, how do we maintain this? We're supposed to own this stuff, but the departments are standing it up. Well, in document management systems, the same thing happens. One team stands up in an AX environment, one team stands up an on-base environment, someone has open text. The main system, maybe they had a really big budget 10 years ago, they got FileNet, but the IT department at that point, they were dealing with 5, 6 different document management vendors. What's the system of record? What's the one that they're going to pour their budget into, they're going to assign resources to? And the data migration teams that we had here at DataBank was really to help consolidate that. If you have a legacy system that no one's using anymore or that there isn't budget for, let's get the data out of that legacy system. Let's park it into what is to be the actual repository for the system, making it easier to maintain, to grow, to take advantage of new features, to consolidate budgets, just making the experience better for all of the users. And it's something that really has translated well into moving to the cloud. We use a lot of the same skill sets, a lot of the same approaches to move data from on-prem into the cloud, making sure that we're doing validation, reconciliation. We know that we've got everything, that it's working properly, but also it's something that we can continue to do for customers if they're moving one system to the cloud, to move multiple systems to the cloud, or to move multiple systems into the primary line of business system that we put into the cloud for a customer.
Well, thanks, Pat. It sounds like the team has a very strong process, and it's because the team's been doing it, right, multiple times. We continue to do more migrations. If we were talking to someone that was going to try a cloud migration on their own, what recommendations would you have for them?
Besides just paying us to do it, really the big recommendations are.
And look, this is the kind of stuff that tends to come up in these cloud conversations. Thing number one, there's lots of shiny objects in the cloud, lots of great new tools and features that can be used. Don't jump into that just yet out of the gate. Minimize the number of changes being made. If you have a system that's on-prem that's using some arcane technology, you know what? Move it to the cloud, maintain that arcane technology, and once you are live and stable and there are no issues, then start updating those old features that you have, those old pieces of technology. That's when you want to start swapping that stuff out. Don't try and do it all at once. Either you'll never get to a point to be able to go live, or you're going to have a go live that's riddled with issues. And that's just both our experience working with customers that have attempted that, as well as just general industry best practices of make the fewest number of changes at one time. Beyond that, the big part of it that we tend to stress is be prepared to test everything. We're talking about changing every single server that the system uses, as well as where the users are pointing to, as well as where the system is pointing to for its data. So be prepared to test everything. That's not to say that it's flawed or that there's risk. That all of that risk is minimized with the testing. Just recognize what is occurring and be prepared to test appropriately for it. Those are the big key pieces of advice that I could give.
I appreciate that, Pat. That helps. I know a lot of people are looking at it in cloud right now, partial migrations, full migrations, and just trying to keep them, moving forward. And if, there is the ability to partner with other companies that are out there, and there are different options for your hosting. Kendra, I got a question for you. So coming from the public sector team, we're seeing a lot of push from our customers for cloud initiatives, right? Cloud first. And we're seeing it, almost every day. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, surprisingly, I think government has been one of the bigger verticals to kind of push for this in the last 6 to 12 months. And I think it is just more a consolidation of their systems and being able to have somebody who might be experts in that area and can potentially make the adjustments and be agile to hosting an enterprise content management system. They're the experts, right? And I think everyone that Patrick and my team has worked with, I think it is pretty happy with the way things went, the speed and the efficiency and the knowledge that the team had really helped out the customer and really gave them the trust, that the cloud team could do this successfully. So I think it's been a very efficient process and very repeatable for customers, which is always making things better.
Kendra, with that, we know the initiatives there. Have you got any feedback from the customers on, hey, we're retiring hardware, hey, we don't want to manage it anymore? What have you been seeing, at least in the last year?
Yeah, I would say definitely consolidating and updating hardware, right? If you're going to update hardware right now, I think a lot of clients are looking for that change to the cloud. Is that an option? And in a lot of cases right now it is. And that's where, we bring Patrick and the cloud team in to talk about our expertise. And even if they're going to their own cloud solution, we do provide services to assist with that in either, AWS or Azure. So that's another potential option. I think the real push is compliance and government statewide and large agencies hosting large ECM solutions, really. So the agility and the technology that's available in the cloud has been a big push.
Yeah, and when you start talking about compliance and you start talking about regulations, Pat, when we started working through the cloud stuff first, that was a pretty big effort, right? To make sure we had everything covered. Do you maybe want to just talk a little bit about that? It's big. It's always the first question that comes up right around ROI and cost.
Yep. So
when you have hardware that is on-prem, that is not exposed to the internet, or you think it's not exposed to the internet, the general perception is it's safe, it's secure. The reality is a lot of data breaches come internally from users that are wiring things up they don't realize they're wiring up, from accidentally bringing in malicious hardware, software, or they are malicious in intent. So it's not very secure. In the cloud, the opposite mindset kind of exists. The thought of, well, my data is no longer here. I can't see the servers. I can't touch them. I can't deal with this stuff directly. It's often this nebulous thing. Tell me that it's secure. Give me proof that it's secure. That's kind of hurdle number one. And it's a valid one. It's a completely valid one. The other side of that we tend to see is some people look at it and go, oh, well, this is Amazon. This is Microsoft. They know best. Just trust them. Do what they do. And the reality is they're those types of cloud platform providers are open and direct and saying, no, you're responsible for this. You have to apply your IT controls. You need to have a change control system. You need to have penetration testing. You need to have intrusion detection software. You still need to do all the same things you do on-prem. And what we have here at DataBank it's a combination of things, but we have a security engineer on the cloud side that is bringing years of experience to ensure that we're doing it right. We're also working with AWS. We're also working with a vendor of ours, happens to be our hardware vendor that also does AWS services, to make sure that we're not just going off of gut feel. Oh, this feels like we're doing it right. We must be doing it right. We're asking everybody. We're asking everyone to basically gut check us. But beyond that, there's a large financial investment that we had to make into this, whether it be the security tools that we're a little over $250,000 a year in cloud security tools alone. That's something that the cost to us is pretty large, and the cost to anyone doing this from scratch would be reasonably large. Because we're hosting, we get to share some of those licenses and the way that we deploy environments. So the cost to our end users is minimal. They're getting that advantage without the price tag. But also the certifications and the external audits that go into this. So we're ISO certified, 27001, 07, and 017. The last two are cloud specific aspects of the ISO certification. It's a year-long process to get prepared for, to have all of your procedures documented, to have an external auditor come in, audit the environment, help you prepare your procedures, to then have a different auditor come in that actually audits for the ISO cert, to then finally get that certification, to then redo it again next year and the year after that and the year after that, making sure that we're living up to all of the things that we say we are. It is a large effort to get that security built, but it's something that we take a lot of pride in, and we sleep well at night knowing that we have a robust system that can handle just about anything that can be thrown at it.
That's good to know. I think that's, the biggest concerns we hear is it's still my data, right? I think you hit on that. That's great. Mm-hmm. We've talked a little bit about trends. We've talked a little bit about why we're talking about it now when we got here. I want to get into some of the cool stuff, right? We're seeing projects every day and working with customers and companies. As soon as we get the cloud lift of whatever solution they're on and they get up there, it's easier to start integrating with other systems. It's easier to start using other microservices. Pat, talk about some of the cool stuff.
So let's talk about one of the things of cloud that it's not a big issue, but it's worth noting. Because it is up in the cloud, there is ingress and egress traffic. And with cloud service providers, oftentimes there's some type of fraction of a penny fee for that egress, sometimes for the ingress of data. We have a customer right now that we're working with who they have SAP. Their SAP system is hosted by SAP. I think it's SAP for HANA is the label for it, but it's actually SAP built in AWS and the AWS cloud, run by SAP. By having customers in our cloud, which is on the back end is AWS for this customer, we're able to stand up peering networks from our AWS environment to the SAP AWS environment, and we can eliminate those ingress and egress charges between the two systems for that integration point. That's something that if the customer still had their on-base system on-prem, they would be paying those ingress and egress traffic fees to SAP for that traffic. If they had their on-base system in the cloud, but SAP were on-prem, they would be paying those ingress and egress fees. So it's something that part of the technology, that's pretty cool. The stuff that we see that's really interesting is in the space of capture. So what could be done with document recognition? What could be done with large language models to read and interpret the content of that document to enhance how indexing happens, to improve the quality, to take advantage of some additional features. All of these things tend to be really interesting. But in addition to that, the more cutting edge technology of moving away from the idea of, I want to have a website or a web service that users rely on. Well, you go back in time a few years and I need to stand up a Windows machine and I need to install IIS and I need to build this .NET application that runs an IIS that runs on this Windows machine. And I have to stand up firewalls and I have to stand up all these other bits to go around it. Then there was move to VM. Well, you're still building a Windows machine, but it's a virtual machine. Now with that additional layer, you're still standing up IIS, you're still doing all these things. In the cloud, we have the ability to do Docker containers. You can think of this as being everything that VM was supposed to be, but better. So isolated components in the environment that is what VMs always should have been. Just this thing that gets turned on that runs your code and nothing but. And it's easier to rebuild, easier to maintain, lower overhead, as well as headless services. We can take advantage of, whether it be Azure or AWS headless services for standing up web service front ends, web service back ends. There's a lot of things that it changes the deployment methodology for the better, making it simpler, making the overhead less, the ownership effort less, oftentimes improving the speed at which we can stand these things up. So that's just a sampling. It's certainly not everything. We could be here for the next 5 hours talking about all the shiny objects.
Well, I love that. There's some cost saving stuff in there too by being in the cloud with shared services, which was really neat to hear. I know one thing that I get pretty excited about, and really this is with a lot of Kendra's teams. When you're working with a software provider or you're working with your own team, projects are seeing less environmental issues holding up projects. So, Kendra, what are you seeing with paces of projects in cloud?
They're fast. I think, the stand up and the testing and having the experts that have done this before, really at your helm, that's been huge for implementations. With quick project timelines, working together with Pat's team and the customer, that's probably been one of the biggest, advantages to the clients and to our customers and partners is being able to do it quickly and efficiently. And then I would say, as far as misconceptions go, one of the biggest things for a lot of the users that we talk to about going to the cloud is, can I still do my stuff, right? Can I still have access to the data like Adam was talking about? Can I still do the things I need to do to configure my system? And the answer is yes, right? We have the ability to give the users that same access to what they had as an admin, and at the admin level, not just the end user level, the same access that they would have to build their system and own that system and maintain it. So that has been maybe one of the biggest misconceptions, I would say, when we're talking about moving clients to the cloud is having that control, and it's still there. And
we're still seeing a very remote-based workforce, right? So if you're doing your own cloud deployment and you have your engineers and your IT staff and they're in different locations, it's easy. Everyone can get there. You can get stuff done fast. And if you are working with a SaaS type product or a software vendor, their support teams can support you so much faster. There's a lot less looking over the shoulder. There's a lot less, working through how to get there, getting approvals. We're in, no changes are ever being made. There's processes for that. And those are things you can do yourself. Just kind of coming to a close on today's episode, Kendra, I'm going to ask you just kind of one question here. Why cloud for you?
The agility, right? Like the ability to integrate, the ability to use the newer technologies, the ability to share infrastructure costs is probably the biggest thing, and then security and just making sure you're compliant. So I guess there's 4 things, but
I'll take them all. Pat, and to close it out today, I'll ask you the same question. What's your elevator pitch? Why cloud?
The biggest thing that I tend to think about is when someone goes to buy an enterprise solution. Let's pick on OnBase here because we've been talking about it. If they're buying that enterprise solution, they're not buying it because they want to have to learn the OnBase database schema. They're not buying it because they want to become experts in file storage. They're not buying it because they want to understand how to stand up a .NET web application on IIS. They're buying it to solve a business problem. They're buying it for their end users to be able to be more efficient. And what having these tools and these applications in the cloud means, and especially when it's in the DataBank cloud with our managed services sitting on top of it, is you have the experience that you should have had from the beginning. You are getting to use the application, think about your end users, the end user's experience, and you don't have to worry about any of the stuff going on under the covers. We've got you covered there.
So, Kendra, I'm hearing a lot of agility, speed. Pat, I think you're talking about easy use a lot, right, of what you're doing and how to make things go quicker and better. And for me, the conversations I've been in a lot and I love is the ROI too. There's a lot to consider that people don't. And it's your hardware, it's your labor, it's the time, there's just a lot of investments that are made. And cloud has been really coming in on top. So, with today's episode, I really hope everyone got to learn a little bit about the cloud. Pat, thank you so much for joining us remotely.
Absolutely.
And Kendra, thank you again. So,
thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. I saved the sip.
Wrapping up today's episode, we got to taste a beer from Duluth, Minnesota, the Cosmic Disco Hazy Double IPA. Kendra Deutsch, who was with me, rated it a 3.5, and I gave, or 4, I think I gave it a 3.5 with a 3.75 rating. It was a lot of fun today with that. We also had our guests from the cloud, Pat Higgins, joining us and talked through how to get to the cloud, what's entailed, and really what happens behind the scenes when you're working on a cloud platform, moving your environment, and really looking at the trends, what we're seeing and what we think we're going to continue to see as we move through the year.